So now let's look at the lower part of that pink handout, and let's try to discern the variety that we're going to see in the connective tissue types. Okay, so connective tissues. Remember that this tissue is composed mostly of matrix. And what is going to distinguish these various types of connective tissue is their matrix. Since the majority of the tissue is matrix, the matrix is probably the first thing I'm going to notice about the tissue. Let's list, if you look at your handout, there's 3 major types of matrix that we're going to find in these tissues. The first, and maybe the most simplest, is fluid type of tissue. Now this one catches people off guard, typically. When we talk about the matrix of the tissue being fluid, we're talking about basically one type of tissue, which is your blood. Now, how many, if I had asked, would have thought that your blood was a tissue? You might not have thought, oh, can a liquid that's running around in your body, is that a tissue? But think, it does fill the definition, doesn't it? Are there cells in your blood? Yes, there are. Red blood cells, white blood cells. There are cells in your blood. So it's a cellular, it's got cells in it. Is there a matrix? What would the matrix be? Plasma, exactly. Plasma is the matrix. So we have to think of blood as a tissue. So, and there's more plasma than there are cells, so it fits that matrix. There's more matrix than there are cells in blood. So it fits this connective tissue category. And I like to think that blood chemically connects you. It's the one tissue that touches every cell in the human body. Blood contains the resources that allow cells to survive. How does a cell deep in your body get oxygen? How does a cell deep in your body get nutrients? How does a cell deep in your body get rid of its waste products? All of that through the bloodstream. The bloodstream is the one tissue that touches every cell in the human body. Every cell survives by its connection to the blood. So this fluid really chemically connects. Every chemical in the human body is kind of shared with everything else because it all is distributed, is transported through the bloodstream. So, now you'll notice there's also a proper type. And if you think of the word proper, if somebody says proper, what does that mean? If you do something in the proper way, you do it in the correct way or the right way. And this is making reference to the term connective. Okay, so the proper types are the types that are truly connecting things in your human body. The third category there are the support tissues, and these are the ones that are forming the framework of your body. These you'd basically think of as bones and related tissues like cartilage. So you see these three categories of matrix. There's a fluid matrix, there are these proper matrices, and these, by the way, are all going to be fibrous types. The proper types all are related to fibers. There are cells that build fibers that hold things together. And the support is more like, building the bones is more like creating concrete. Build a building out of concrete. So, okay. So in the fluid category, what you saw there was that we were talking about cells and the plasma matrix. We do need to include, though, also the tissues that make the blood. Anybody know where blood is made in your body? Yeah, deep inside your bones in what we call bone marrow. And the term for that is that tissue is hemopoietic. Okay? Hemo, you might recognize that as being associated with blood. And poetic, poems are like things that people create, right? It's an artistic expression. So this is literally blood-creating tissues. So the marrow, the red blood marrow tissues deep in your bones would also be included in this fluid type. Okay, let's go to the proper types then. In the proper connective tissues, what we find are fibers. We have cells in the human body that produce fibers. These fibers are sticky. They hold on to one another, and they also become attached to other things around about them. And in doing that, they create masses of fibers then that hold things together. The picture that you see here is a loose weave of fibers, and basically you want to think there are two different types of fibers that the human body produces. It produces some that are called elastic, and in the picture that we have here, the dark, very thin, wiry type fibers are elastic. If we could look at them under a higher microscope, they would look like little springs, sort of, so that they can stretch. They're elastic. The thicker pink fibers here are known as collagen fibers. And collagen, you've probably heard the word collagen before. Skin people with, needing skin care and stuff often use the word collagen. Collagen is a protein fiber that is produced by cells in your body that adds strength and toughness. Collagen fibers are strong and tough. So what I see here in this picture is sort of a loose weave of some strong fibers and some elastic fibers. So all of the proper types are going to have some sort of fiber associated with them. So this happens to be the type we've just been looking at, just kind of get things started, is what we call areolar connective tissue. And this is in the category of the loose connective tissue types. If you look at your pink handout, you see that I'm going to find loose connective types and dense connective types. And this is in the loose category. Now there's a couple of other things listed under the loose category. I want to come back to those. Basically, this is the only real fibrous type in that loose category. Let's look at the dense category now. In the dense connective tissue categories, we don't find a blend of two different fiber types. We typically find one or the other. So you can see that there are dense elastic types and dense collagenous types. The other word that you see associated with, or the other pair of words that you see associated with the dense types, is the word regular or irregular. And those two words are used to describe the relationship of the fibers within the tissue. If all of the fibers are running the same direction within the tissue, it's called regular. And what generally happens here is when all the fibers are running the same direction, this kind of tissue forms itself into cords or ropes or threads of connective tissue. If you look at some of the muscles in the forearm over here on the picture, you'll notice muscles in the forearm, and they have cords or ropes that lead down into the fingers of the hand. Right? All of those cords are a regular type. Now, do you think those cords that lead into the fingers there, do you think those are collagen or elastic? When they pull, is there a springy thing going on here, or is it a tight, tough connection to the bones? Tight, tough connection. Collagen is used throughout the muscular system. You need strength. The muscles are strong. When they pull, you don't want to pull on something that's going to stretch, and then the bone wouldn't move, right? Right? You want something that's tough. And so all of the cord-like structures in the muscular system are going to be dense, regular, collagenous. Where might I find a cord that would be stretchy? Typical example here would be your vocal cords, right? I've got vocal cords, I've got a couple of vocal cords, and they get vibrated by air passing over them. As they vibrate, though, they can make different sounds. How do I make different sounds? By stretching that cord. Ever tuned a guitar or a violin or whatever? As you tighten the little string, what happens to the pitch of the sound? It goes up, doesn't it? Tighter it is, the higher the pitch of the sound. The looser it is, the lower the pitch. And that's going on in my vocal cords. If I make little high-pitched sounds, I'm stretching those vocal cords. Right? If I'm making low sounds, my vocal cords are being relaxed. Right? And you can make all sorts of sounds based on the stretching of these elastic cord-like structures, which are a regular, elastic, dense connective tissue. Now, like there are two regular types, there are two irregular types. And there's an irregular elastic, and you can see the fibers here are weaving all over the place. And over here, you can see that they're all weaving sort of over here as well. There's irregular collagenous and irregular elastic connective tissue. Now, the regular types, when you see them, are usually formed into cords. Think of a rope. If you were to look at all the little fibers that make up a rope, they're all running the same direction, aren't they? In an irregular type, the fibers are running across each other. Think of like a piece of cloth. If I looked at all the threads in the cloth of my shirt, I'd see them running different directions, wouldn't I? And so these connective tissues build themselves into sheet-like structures. Again, look at the picture of the muscles over here and look at the abdomen. You see that big sheet of white right down the center of your belly? Right? That's a big sheet of irregular collagenous connective tissue. Very strong, very tough, but instead of being built into a cord, it's built into a sheet-like structure. It makes sense? Right? In the elastic type, we have sheets of elastic tissue, say in an artery. The major arteries in my body pulse, don't they? If I put my fingers here at my wrist, I can feel a pulse. What is that? There's a tube in there, and what's it doing? It's going, it's bulging. As blood is being pushed in there, it's able to expand, and then it contracts back. And my heart is just continually pushing out these dollops of blood into an artery. The artery has to expand to be able to absorb the blood from the heart, but then the elasticity squeezes back on that blood and shoots the blood forward, and it bulges. And so if you could, you would see little bulges traveling all the way down my arteries, all the way down to the tips of my fingers. But there has to be a sheet of this elastic connective tissue as one of the sheets in the tube of an artery to allow it to expand and contract. So there's 4 dense types, and it's very easy to remember them. Just remember there's 2 that are regular, 2 that are 2 that are irregular. There's collagen and elastic, and you can come up with the 4 types very, very easily. Right? So in your handout here, right, we've got these 4 dense types right here. Remember, collagen is strong. Elastic is just what it says it is. Over here in the loose types, the areolar type, right, is the loose weave. I'm going to come back to those other ones in just a minute, but let's deal with the other half of this, and then we'll come back and we'll finish this up by picking up the rest of this over here. Let's look at the structural types now. Okay? The structural types that are within this connective category are bone and cartilage. Bone and cartilage. What's the difference between bone and cartilage? Can you find cartilage on your body? Where is the most obvious? Yeah, your ears and your nose, right? I think of it kind of like bone because it has a definite shape. It's covered with skin. But I think of it as flexible. Now, it's interesting that the main matrix of both bone and cartilage is something called ground substance. Ground substance. Now, you got to be careful here. There's sort of two different definitions for the word ground. Right? What do you think of if you think of the word ground? Yeah, like ground beef. You know that's or you know when I was a kid and we went to the market, my mom always ordered some ground round from the butcher, you know, which is ground beef. Right? I'm always thinking that, like to grind something up, but that's not what this means. What else? What's another definition for the word ground? Like the floor, right? Meaning something stable, like the ground, like the bottom. This is the stable. This is the major, the basic, the foundational. Maybe the word foundation would be good. This is the foundational substance of all of the structure of your body. Ground substance. If you want to get into the chemistry of it, it's really complex. It's hyaluronic acid and proteoglycans and all sorts of stuff, but it's just from day one, it's been called ground substance. Now, if you want to have more of a feel for that, think of cartilage. Where in your everyday life might you run into cartilage? Not cartilage under your skin here. Where might you see cartilage as you live out today? Right. In a chicken. Go to Pollo Loco or Popeyes or, wherever you might go to get some chicken. Right? If you look at the end of a chicken leg or a thigh or whatever where there was a joint, you're probably going to see some bright white sort of rubbery material, right? A little bit plastic almost. The basic structure of cartilage is ground substance. So if you think of ground substance, think of like cartilage. Think of cartilage. Now it turns out that both bone and cartilage have this same foundation. This is kind of like, most of the buildings that we build have concrete somewhere in them, don't they? I mean, this building right here, all these walls are concrete, the floors are concrete, everything in this building just about is concrete. But even if you have a stick frame house, you've probably got a concrete foundation, right? We use concrete as a major building substance. Ground substance is the basic foundational material of your entire skeleton and all of your cartilage. Now, what makes cartilage and bone different is what is added to the concrete. What is added to it. Okay? In bone, what happens is that the ground substance, this sort of plasticky material, gets minerals added to it. Calcium and phosphorus. These two minerals have to come in your diet or you can't build bone. You have to have these two substances in the food that you eat to be able to build bone. You build the ground substance out of carbohydrates and proteins, but to make the bone hard, you have to add minerals to it. You can actually do a little experiment at home and take the minerals back out of a bone. Take like a chicken bone. You have to scrape all the stuff off of it, but put that bone in like a little jar of vinegar. Coke or soda will work, except that the carbon dioxide gets out of it pretty quickly. But if you put it like in a little bit of acid, which is like what vinegar is, the acid will dissolve these minerals right back out of it, and you'll be left with a little rubbery bone, a bone that feels like cartilage. And basically that's what bone cells are doing. Bone cells are embedding these minerals into this form of ground substance to make it hard and rock-like. So that's the quality that there is in bone. Now, cartilage is mostly just ground substance without any minerals added. What does get added to the ground substance in cartilage, though, is typically collagen or elastic fibers. There are 3 types of cartilage that you want to be able to recognize. And you see those in your list. And they're all based on the amount and the type of fiber that is put into them. I like to think of this like reinforced concrete, right? When you do concrete like you see here, or the concrete in a foundation, it's not just concrete, is it? Because concrete can crumble. But if you watch them build, they put a lot of steel in. Anybody driving off the Inland Center off-ramp to come over here to school? You see those big, you wonder what they're doing over there? They're building these huge walls over there in front of the Macy's and stuff, these big, but when you look at it, what they do is they put up this huge steel scaffolding of reinforcing rods, and then they put these forms up, and then they pour the concrete over it. So you know that concrete has got all this steel down inside it. That's kind of like what some of these cartilage types are. It's ground substance, but it's got these reinforcing fibers in it to make it strong. So, the cartilage types. First of all, hyaline cartilage. Now, all 3 types have some fiber in them, but hyaline has the least and the smallest type of fiber in it. So it's the smoothest type. This is the type that we use to cover the ends of the bone. If you took that chicken leg apart, that smooth, slick cartilage that we find in joints is hyaline type. And there are a couple of other places. Your nose is actually a hyaline cartilage. We find it lining the movable joints. It's also the type that's here in your rib cage. This is hyaline cartilage joining your ribs to your sternum here. So there's a number of places you can find hyaline. It's also, though, the most brittle because it has the least amount of reinforcement in it. So it can crumble and crack. At least it can easier than the other 2. The second type of cartilage is elastic cartilage. Guess what fibers are in elastic cartilage? Come on, you can do it. Elastic fibers, yeah, exactly. No collagen in this one, just elastic fibers. So what do you think this cartilage is like? Very flexible, like your ears, right? The cartilage in your ears. Or look at your dog or cat. You have a dog or a cat that has ears that stand up, but if you push on them, the ears just flop around, but then they just spring right back into place. That's all elastic cartilage. Tends to be fairly thin, so it can hold a shape, but it can fold and bend. You know, you can take your ears and just do a lot, so you can fold them a lot of different ways. Can't push your nose too far because it's hyaline, right? It doesn't bend like your ears do. So ears are the best example of that. Now the third type here is called fibrocartilage. Since we put elastic in one type, guess what we put in here? Large amounts of collagen. This is the strongest, toughest type of cartilage. Your body uses this when it needs to have something flexible, but it needs that to be strong. And the best example here are the discs that are located between the vertebra of your back. Your spine is a series of separate bones all stacked on each other, but there is a disc of cartilage between each one. Okay, disc of cartilage between each one. And when you look at it, under the microscope, what you see is you see a ground substance base, but you see all of these collagen fibers running through it. So all cartilage is reinforced with fiber, but it's the amount, it's the type of fiber and how much. This is collagen up here too in hyaline, but the fibers are so small that the surface of the cartilage is very soft and smooth to be able to function in joints. So the structural support tissues are cartilage and bone. Now ignore this compact cancellous. I wanted to put it down here that there are two types of bone. They're not different though in their makeup. They're identical. They're both minerals and ground substance, but they have sort of a different shape to them. We're going to talk about these two types of bone in our next unit when we talk about the skeletal system. Skeletal system will be one of the subjects of our next unit. So just ignore those for now. Okay, so basically what I've done is I've walked you through all of the outline of these except for those extra loose types. And these are just really, really odd. So I'm saving these for last. If you look under the loose, the proper connective tissue, if you look under the loose type over there, you see a relar connective tissue, which I've already shown you, just a loose weave of collagen and elastic fibers. But you also see adipose there, don't you? Now, by now, you know what adipose tissue is, don't you? It's what? Fat. Now, you stop for a moment and you go, now, wait a minute. What does fat connect? Does fat connect anything? No. It's just storage, right? We're just storing extra energy for that day that we're starving to death. You're going to go hiking in the mountains or you get lost for a week and you're going to have fuel to survive on. You're going to survive because you've got stored fuel. Why in heaven's name would I put adipose under the connective tissue types? It doesn't connect. It doesn't support. It does add some contour to your body, but it doesn't support you in any way. Maybe it supports you nutritionally, sort of philosophical, right? Why am I putting it here? Well, the number one reason is historically and practically, we always find adipose tissue associated with the loose areolar type. You see how much space there is here between these fibers? Guess what is typically found in between the fibers? Fat, exactly. A great example of where you would find this areolar connective tissue is right here where your skin is being held to your body, right? It's being held loose. You can grab your skin and pull it away from your body. If you let go, it springs back into place. In between my skin, which is fairly tough, and the muscle of my body, right, is a layer of this areolar connective tissue that holds it together, right? And marbled in and through there is fat. Where do I find out most of the fat on my body? It's between my skin and my body, isn't it? And so the association of these two is what put this in the connective tissue category. That and the fact that adipose tissue looks like it's mostly matrix. When I look at adipose tissue, the majority of what I see is fat, right? Let's look at it, right? A picture of adipose tissue looks like this. Does this look like mostly cells or mostly stuff? So it looks like mostly stuff. Now, you and I know in reality, every one of those bits of fat is inside a cell. So really, this is densely packed cells, isn't it? In reality, this is densely packed cells. But when I look at it under the microscope, it looks like there's so much fat there that it looks like there's a lot of matrix. The matrix is internal to the cells instead of external, like the matrix of most tissues. So you could have a court case here and say, this isn't a connective tissue, it's mostly cellular. The matrix is not outside the cell like other tissues, it's inside. Well, on the other side of the court case would be saying, this is a connective tissue. It's always found with a reeler. It is mostly fat, even though the matrix is inside. So you can argue this both ways, but just the way this has always been done is to include adipose tissue as one of the loose types. So live with it, right? It's just the way it is. All right, so here is our total. This reticular type, I'm not going to go into the details of that. This is very rare in the human body. It is a collagen fiber in a loose sort of network weave. So if you ignore that one and don't worry about these two types of bone, make sure you know the rest of this. You can know that you'll definitely see questions on this in the exam that we're going to take a week from today. And we'll talk about the exam in more detail on Friday. Okay? Everybody good? Any last questions about these tissues? Okay. You know what to do? Study this stuff so that you're ready to add more to it on Friday. Mm-hmm.